Hello and welcome back to another week at DroneDJ. We've got some top stories for you this week, kicking off with a confirmed fine for a Canadian film crew, and then we have a series of stories on drone delivery along with beyond visual line of sight operations, and then we have a recap on the DJI Neo following last week's leak. What do we know so far? Let's kick off with the confirmed fine. I mean, anytime we see a large fine issued for illegal drone operations in North America, it's definitely worth discussing because we haven't seen that many. Enforcement is a well-known issue. So it's definitely interesting to learn from any case that's been confirmed and what actually happened. Let me share the story we have.
Yeah, so apparently some Canadian film crews were doing some illegal filming of whales. I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know you had to apply for a permit in Canada to film certain animals. Do you
This
know
is
anything about
this is
this?
a
Like, what is
special
the whole
case
deal with
because
this?
this is a specific protected area, right? Like this is not just in the middle of nowhere where you can go and film wildlife, but this is actually a protected area where the company applied for a permit. Wait, where was that? Ding, ding. Yeah, so the company had applied for a permit back in 2020, and it was already rejected. So they knew they had to apply for permit and they were rejected. Then in 2021, in August, they went to film it anyway.
Typical.
And that's when they got caught and they were issued a fine. And meanwhile they pleaded guilty. So total fine is $22,500. Like I said, this is a specific area. Where was the abbreviation? Yeah, this is protected under the Species at Risk Act. So outside of your typical, Transport Canada drone regulations, you also need to
Yeah.
pay attention to special areas. And plus, just on top of that, killer whales, the size is pretty big. So depending on how large
Okay.
the area is, I mean, they could have achieved this with zoom cameras and stay, far away without disturbing the actual animals, right?
Yeah. So this is only just for the specific area that they're in. It's not like any killer whales in Canada waters that have a permit to film them.
Yeah, so pretty much you have to watch where you are
Okay.
and the time as well.
Gotcha.
This is specifically where was that line there. This was for filming the documentary.
Okay.
And they were capturing at a well-known, right? I think those are the keywords. This is a well-known location where the animals are being protected, especially during the specific season, right?
Yeah, something about knowing the permit, filing the permit. Like if they didn't file a permit and just did it, they could have had a plausible deniability that like, oh, we didn't know that there was a permit needed. Because I would have known that. I would have just gone and flown. Like I didn't know. Like there's no airspace restrictions. I would just gone and flown. But yeah, that's a kind of typical shut and but open and shut, just done. You knew what you were doing and you broke the laws anyways. So don't do
And
that.
also just from past experience, when your application, it's interesting to say the application was rejected, where is it applied for it, and application was not approved. Now,
Yeah.
when your application is not approved, in Canada, the inspectors actually get back to you with why it was not approved. They would actually
Mm-hmm.
tell you their concerns and what they want you to address. It's not like, okay, you submitted it, here's rejection and done. Normally there's a bit of back and forth where they would come back to say, we need you to work on this and that areas, and if you can address them, we can approve your application, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe they just looked at them like, we don't want to fix that. Or
Um,
everything they did wrong was everything they wanted to do. So I don't know.
well, as far as fines go, this is exactly everything that could have gone wrong had gone wrong
Yep.
in this case. And previously, when we had a police drone crashing into an actual small plane at a well-known controlled airport, right? That was also everything that could have gone wrong had gone wrong, which normally, as far as enforcement and fines go, those are usually the cases that are made examples of.
Yeah. And for
Oh,
for a depending on the size of the film company, a $22,000 fine might be it. They might be done. For the
documentaries typically don't have large budget.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that might be, yeah. So whatever.
This may
You're a
be
killer
why
whale fan and you were looking forward to this documentary. I'm sorry, probably not
this
gonna see
maybe
it.
they couldn't afford why they couldn't afford a larger drone with a zoom camera, right?
Yeah, probably.
Because of
Yep.
budget restraints too. Yeah. Okay.
Flying a mini out there in the
Oh,
middle of the
along
ocean.
that note, the footage was also forbidden to be used in the actual.
I was assuming, yeah, that you wouldn't be able to use the footage in after this. So.
Obviously, you can't monetize on the illegal footage to pay for the fines. That wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, that would be something you would be able to do here in the States. That you would get fined on the footage, but you still be able to use the footage. So
Moving
they can't
along,
pass
we
it.
have a series of stories for essentially, drone delivery and beyond visual line of sight operations or remote control operations. Starting with Walmart's budget cut in 3 states amid high costs. We talked about this. I was always interested in how much does it really cost for drone delivery, right? As a business case, is it more or less than having a driver? Load a vehicle with all the packages and hit the different properties.
Yeah, so specifically, it's not necessarily Walmart itself, because Walmart partners with DroneUp. So DroneUp's the one who is laying off employees. So they're closing out 18 hubs across some cities, laying off 70 employees, and then which comes out to about 70% of their workforce. So it is also that time of year where we start seeing layoffs, not necessarily to cut costs, but mostly to increase profits. So there's a chance that these couple centers were not the most profitable, and so they're cutting it for the end of the quarter to show that they have better numbers for the year, and then they'll ramp up again in the beginning of the year. Like that happens very regularly across companies. They give their reasons, but it's a good reason, is that they just want to boost their profit numbers by the end of the year.
Right. What interested me are these numbers right here. The cost to deliver a package by a drone is around $30.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
That is
far
a lot.
traditional ground delivery methods. That is a lot.
Like,
what I would also like to see more is when they say $30 per delivery, what's the maximum size of the package and what's the average size of the package versus when we say ground-based delivery methods, the maximum size or the average size can be much larger than the one on the drone, right?
and the big question is, what's driving that cost? Because I can't see them reducing the cost of the drone. I mean, they could reduce the cost of the drone by mass producing it, right? Like there's that, but also, is that feasible for the short term? And then, but also, is it manpower? Like, do they want to reduce the amount of people who operate the drones? Is it
Yeah,
like
how much of the cost is
cost of
upfront to development cost, research development cost of implementing this versus the real per delivery cost?
Yes, like where does that cost? Because $7, I think, back from my my DoorDashing days, I think that's about how much I would make. Maybe a little bit less, like between like $4 to $10 would be usually what like a person can make doing DoorDash. So like that's how much I would expect like a normal ground delivery like vehicle would cost, is around that single digit range. So like how do how are they planning on getting to it, which is an interesting question. Like, what are they reducing the cost on? Like, what can you reduce the cost on? You can't get the land smaller, probably. You can maybe get less people. The drone could be cheaper, like I said, in mass production, but are you mass producing these drones? Probably not. Yeah, like I don't know. Like, is it fees? Like, I don't know.
I
Like,
do not like aggregated numbers because the average cost of $7, like I said, there's package sizes. I like to see that, tiered by the different sizes and weight of the package. Number two, I also like to see that number broken down by density, population density, right? Does it cost less if someone's carrying, a load of packages into, let's say, a condo building, delivery 10 units? Versus someone going through a subdivision, same thing, multiple packages. I believe volume is really the game. But if it's a vehicle going to rural locations, then the cost will be much higher. So the numbers really needs to be more segmented to speak to the proper research, right?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing you mentioned is like how many deliveries are you doing in a time frame for the cost as well.
Mhm.
That's probably the big thing, and I bet
I agree. Yeah, there's also
I bet that's the leading factor of the cost is you need to just do more deliveries, and I bet these centers just weren't producing those high enough numbers.
And are the drones literally from terminal to the delivery point to destination? Or is it, I remember at one time UPS had a drone platform on the top of their UPS truck, right? Where you get to rural locations, the idea is the drone goes, the truck goes to a centralized point, let's say in a rural small town, and then the drone takes packages to individual residences rather than the truck having to go to each one. So is it a blended method or is it a pure drone delivery method?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, interesting interesting data, but we definitely started seeing more data. I think seeing the average number comparison is a good start. Before we didn't even know how much it would cost average, right?
Yeah, I mean, as the industry grows, I'm sure there'll be more data released. I think right now it's all just no one wants to show their hand because you have companies like Wing and what is it, like Zipline and Flytrax. I've mentioned the story as well, that they're just competing against each other, and it's just like every little bit of data that they can keep close is a competitive edge to them. I think, I don't know, it might still take a while. Like I'm shocked they even shared like how much it costs for them to do a delivery, but I guess it makes sense when you're announcing layoffs. You got to kind of announce some sort of reason for it.
Right.
But it's going to be probably a while before like they just open up, or we see a public company that handles drone deliveries, so that you have quarterly earnings. But it's going to be a bit, because I think everyone's still trying to just keep.
And we're still unclear of the business model, because if you look at Uber, DoorDash, that's pretty clear business model. It's just a software company at the end of the day, right?
Yep.
Individual providers own their own asset, which is their vehicle. They are contracted. They can agree to picking up an order or picking up a delivery or not. Versus currently, it looks like DroneUp owns the drones and it's operating, it's everything together, right?
It's a lot more than just a software company. I mean, like Walmart's now the software company, and they're the hardware company. They're delivery service, so which is a lot more harder to.
And there's a lot more industry infrastructure that needs to be built, and that's not just the hardware; it's also the process, the relationship with FA, with the different regulatory bodies. Everything comes together, right?
Yep.
Well, next one, along drone delivery. UK approves new drone delivery inspection trials. It's interesting. We're not short of stories about trials, right? It's how many come through trial to get to an actual, operation, like a business model where there's revenue, there's cost, there's profit. That's the question mark.
And the UK seems weird because sometimes they seem like they're the leader, and sometimes they seem like they're like just the last person to do anything and anything drone related. So like they have some, like we talked about months prior about like they have certain wanting to do drone lanes in the air where only drones can fly, and these like kind of like these highways in area,
and
like
we don't hear much from
BVLOS. And it's really great. And then they just don't they don't even have like BVLOS like capability yet. So but it's just everything that's step forward in like the directions where these kind of happen. And it looks like six people. Amazon was one of them. I don't know the list of the other people who were selected to do these trials, but shocker, Amazon's delivered. I mean, of course, Amazon's in this list. If they're gonna do any sort of test delivery to increase their ability to do it, I'm sure they're gonna take the chances to do that. But
there's a lot of back and forth as the different development of delivery, divisions within the big joints, so to speak. There's a lot of, okay, we're going to do something. And then a couple of years later, the department is slashed, and then it comes back at limited capacity to continue research. There's a lot of back and forth right now.
Oh yeah, there's always like just politics always just changes everything. Like when all of a sudden like you have a new government comes in and just like we don't care anymore. So which is always annoying for anything.
It's interesting. We haven't seen really one major player that just says we're committed to really making drone delivery work, and regardless of what happens, here's the committed plan and we're sticking to it.
Well, I feel like there's some European countries like the Netherlands and like Norway and whatnot, I think are doing like kind of hard, like actually useful drone delivery, policies where it's not necessarily just we're going to open up and everyone's going to come in and do like food delivery, but like, deliveries out to windmills and medical delivery and stuff like that.
Medical
I think
deliveries to remote
that
communities.
some areas are there and have really been much better at like, we're going to allow this and this is how we're going to do it and it's going to be great, versus I feel like the United States way, which also the UK kind of follows and Canada kind of follows, which is just like, we're just going to open up to everyone and then we'll let the market decide what happens.
Yeah. Well, we shall see, and we'll keep following on the stories. And the next one along beyond visual line of sight is the New York Power Authority gets the FAA approval for statewide remote drone inspections. This is not the first one for Power Authority. I believe there was one we saw earlier this year that was about corridor inspection. So same thing for utilities, and it was approved as a corridor inspection along all the major utility lines.
Yeah, so good news there. I mean, using these drones, I expect the power grid very, very helpful.
So we're seeing the story is saying the waiver is a significant expansion of NYPA's drone program, which has been steadily growing in scope, supported by 37 million investment, which is also interesting. I would like to know what type of drones are they operating? How many are DJI? How many are Skydio? If they're using any SUAS drones?
I remember. I think I had the story before. I think a lot of them are custom, or they're what's the big platform that you guys use in Hollywood all the time?
The Dock 2 or the Matrix 350?
I think it is some of that, but I watched. It's a lot of custom. Like I can't remember. Alta X.
Yeah. Free Fly.
Yeah, Free Fly. Yeah, I think there's a lot of Free Fly systems, and then
yes. So there's
but
this approval. Okay, this approval it's specifically for the Skydio Dock and X2.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, which that's kind of what that system is set up for, is these kind of broad BVLOS operations. So it makes sense that they're doing some of that.
And one more story we have is to recap on the DJI Neo. Last week we went through the leak on DJI Neo, so here's a recap on everything we know so far.
Which is also just a big old posting that got posted by Jasper Ellens over on X. Like I saw that and I'm like, it's like everything. I'm like, cool. Here's everything we know, which is everything. So,
first of all, it's not going to be a carbon copy of the Snap Pixie, which I guess that's the good news, or the popular Hover Air, as we talked about last week.
It seems like I mentioned in the post, like it is DJI's attempt to compete against those, but it's on DJI's terms, which is it's a drone. It's not a flying camera. Like it might act like a flying camera, like these other products, but don't forget that we are a drone company and we make drones. Yeah. So some of that stuff that kind of is different.
I want to say, I feel like this is closer to Spark, like a better executed version of Spark. I like the voice control instead of the gesture. I remember doing the gesture control on Spark. It was driving me crazy. So voice control should be interesting to try. And it says remotely. So this is similar to when we talked about the Hover Air. This is going to be no remote control, which I guess why the price point is much lower. Right?
Yeah. So the two things that they're coming up with, voice control and also just using your phone. You can just use your phone. It says in the posting that you can there's just virtual joysticks in the phone you can use to control it, as well as like choosing automated flights as well.
And there's potential compatibility with
and then right on top of it's like, oh, by the way, this is a drone, so you're gonna be able to fly it with a controller, and we're gonna have FPV controllability on it too. Like, it's kind of just like, it just chuckles me that like we're gonna compete against these two guys, but we're going to one up it so like just majorly and have FPV flights on it.
Well, I think this is really going to open up to the youth, to younger age, entering the drone market and trying things, because DJI slashed their STEM robotics with Tello, which was the programmable drone for STEM, for school projects. And we haven't really seen anything replacing Spark, and we don't really see like an indoor flying drone that's a smaller version of the Avata. So if you ask me, just knowing the typical schools who usually ask for us to come in and show students what drones can do, this is a great way for students to be hands-on.
Yep, for sure. And I think it's going to be really great for those, not like any of those people who are big social media posters, but aren't like professional social media posters, who want to, take something out.
Just want to have something.
They just want something to show their friends. Because also, there's a lot of cool editing features that were in this leak, like the ability to use your mic too, and then they'll automatically remove the rotor noise, and they'll sync that audio up already, like with the drone. So,
and just to compare this with its competitor Hover Air X1, because we also talked about the X1 having the Pro and Pro Max model. Which is going to improve its performance against wind. I guess we'll see when Neo really stands side by side with the Hover Air and see how they compete with each other.
Yeah, we should see a side by side between those, because I think right now, really, the only thing that the Hover really, if all these specs are true, I think the only thing the Hover Air really like beats the DJI on is the
8K
video quality, 8K 30 and 4K 120. So it just like which one is easier to control?
Let
which
me ask
one
this:
has
if you
better
want 8K quality, then why the price tag is $300 on buying a small drone? Like if you want 8K quality, you've got to have pretty beefy computers to process that.
I mean, if you really, I mean, yeah, like if you're using 8K quality, like you are not operating at a scale for these drones. Like you probably are operating with like the ability to have a drone pilot fly around you. You know what I mean? Like it's not necessary, but also it's a great talking point. So I don't know, like it's kind of a weird spec to push, but also
We
not
shall
saying no,
see.
don't do it.
I just like to see the comparison. As I mentioned last week for Hover, most of the footage I've seen, most of the reviews I've seen, are people getting some, like you get a sense of you use Hover because you know this is a shot, you just want to get it done. You have it take off from your palm, there's a drone or there's a circle or rocket, and then it comes straight down. Versus the typical DJI drones, there's a sense of discovery in there. There's a sense of let me take off, let me get a feel of what's around me, and let me explore and try it. So I want to see if Neo still carries that same, spirit rather than the feel I got from Hover Air.
Now, I think about it. I think the Hover, the 8K version of the Hover X1, that's the first consumer drone, I think, with 8K.
Maybe.
Because the Inspire 3 is the only one I could think of with 8K. And that's
Autel was the first one with 8K too.
Oh, there is an Autel 8K one, isn't there? Yeah, I think there is. Okay.
Yeah.
Was that the Evo though? Was that the Lite Plus?
Evo 2 had a specific 8K version.
Is the Evo 2 though a consumer product? I don't know. Like Evo 2 always to me seems like it's like in that borderline, kind of like the Inspire 3 is like technically Inspire 3 is
like consumer product is more of a retailer's definition. It's not the manufacturer definition, right? Manufacturer is camera drone versus enterprise versus like industrial drones.
Yeah. It's like the Inspire 3 is technically just a camera drone, but it's a very expensive camera drone.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't really call that consumer. And then Evo, the use cases for the Evo is primarily enterprise. So anyways, it's interesting to see that more 8K products coming onto the scene too as well.
Well, those are all the stories we got for you this week. I don't believe we have a release date yet for the Neo, but normally once they hit FCC, that means we should see it within a matter of a month or two, right?
According to the leaks, it was yesterday. So nothing. One of my pitches
we haven't seen the actual. Normally, DJI would have a release to say, "Hey, on such date, we're gonna have a launch event," and you can usually guess what the product is gonna be.
Right? Yeah, I guessed that there's a possibility this is released only in China first, and then brought to the United States. Kind of how Hover. I mean, Hover was primarily.
Their main market is still China.
Their main market is China. So, and DJI has done like their products where the main markets are in China first, then United States, kind of like with the fly cart and all their agricultural drones. So it would be the first consumer product to do that, but I could see them doing that for sure.
Also, I wonder if it's gonna wait till sort of after back to school is done, and it's gonna try to promote more activities in school.
Or today would be, now would be the time to do it. I mean, all the back to school stuff is starting to pop up. I mean, we start my church starts school in a couple weeks, so now it's time to promote it.
Yeah. The interesting line would be, I want to see if DJI's no fly zone would still apply to Neo.
I feel like it has to. Right? Because you can control it yourself. So maybe it doesn't. Maybe not for. No, it's got to.
I don't know. We shall see, right?
I think it has to. Yep. I'll just take it out to an airport if I get a review unit.
Well, we'll keep you posted
I'm not doing that.
Our review unit. That's all this week. We'll see you back another week.